Good morning, Atonement. Today has historically been a young adult Sunday, and so for our sermon time today, I want to bring in both a colleague and also a friend. Um, his name is Kevin Beebe. He is the pastor at Spirit Alive, which is an ELCA church in Kenosha. And Kevin spent a year in the Holy Land doing young adults in global mission. And so Kevin and I have a conversation about his time in the Holy Land and also my time in the Holy Land and about encountering and finding God in unexpected places and unexpected people and about hope not as just this like abstract I wish, but hope as something that we live into and struggle for day in and day out. When it feels like the world is stacked against us. And I think it's a message and a word that I found a lot of encouragement and life in, and I hope you do as well. This is a really neat conversation, and I really look forward to having a couple minutes to listen to that with you as well. Let's welcome Kevin Beebe. So, good morning, church. I'm here with Kevin Beebe, who is another new pastor in our synod. I quickly connected with him. Not only is he named Kevin and is from the West Coast, but he also spent a significant amount of time in the Holy Land like I had. I spent like probably 4 to 6 weeks there. You spent a lot more time there, Kevin, because you went and did YACM, so ELCA's Young Adult and Global Mission there. So tell me a little bit about your experience in the Holy Land.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevin. It's great to always get a chance to talk a little bit about it. So I was a young adult in global mission back in 2013 to 2014. So I served in the West Bank, and you're going to hear me use the term Palestine to refer to what's often called the West Bank, which is on the east side of the country. That always confuses people. And I served just north of the city of Jerusalem, in the city of Ramallah. Ramallah is kind of the metropolitan de facto capital for the Palestinian Authority. So it's a big bustling city, but it is beyond the wall. So I lived with the pastor of the Lutheran Church of Hope, which is the youngest of the Lutheran churches in the Holy Land. There's about 6 Lutheran churches in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land, 1 in Jordan, and then the rest all in the West Bank and 1 in Jerusalem. So my primary role there was to teach English and run a model United Nations program for the ELCJHL schools, and specifically the School of Hope in Ramallah. And then really my real reason of being there was to be immersed with a different people trying to struggle and walk in what it means to be people of faith in the world. YAGM, people talk about what they did there, but it's more of an experience of what happens to you and what happened to me in that time. Just like the day-to-day learning how to speak a foreign language, just roughly enough that you can get by, or just enough that the taxi drivers eventually just get fed up with you and switch to English anyway. And to figure out how to move in a world where when you're so used to moving and experiencing, where as an American, where I just go places, like today I have to go to Lowe's to buy paint for my house, and my wife and I are going to get in the car and drive to Lowe's. But in Palestine, it's a whole different ballgame because there's checkpoints and border walls and things like that. To live in a world where every moment of to exist, just simply to exist, is a struggle and a contentious point in the world. I mean, to say the word Palestine in the world is a contentious point. So to be with that people and to experience what I would say for the first time in my life, what the true breaking in of life is in a world surrounded by death and destruction. The Palestinians have this motto, to exist is to resist. And basically what they mean is they refuse to disappear, that to just live their lives like normal people, go to the grocery store, ride public transportation, go to Stars and Bucks, which is not Starbucks as we know it in America, but a weird knockoff cafe. There's a lot of Palestinian restaurants that are named after Americanized things. to live that life, to exist, to simply continue to be, to have babies born and to celebrate festivals like Christmas or New Year's, or if they're Muslim, Eid and Ramadan, is enough to show that life continues and to give hope into the world. Um, yeah, it was a great place to be. I would highly, I try and go back as often as I can, and it's been a while now. It's been a couple of years, but um, it definitely, it launched me in, I was already planning to go to seminary. I actually applied to seminary in the terminal of O'Hare International on my way flying out for Yagam, but it changed how I examined seminary when I came back. It changed my faith from being just like, I want to follow God and be like this one who preaches God's love all the time, to one who wants to wrestle with God, one who wants to shout at God, one who wants to ask, why are these hard things happening in the world to this beautiful people, and also to preach how life continues to break in even in the most difficult of circumstances. So yeah, that's kind of like a rough overview of
Yeah.
a year of my time there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I'm really, grateful for you sharing that. And you just, even the way you talked about Palestine, it reminded me of my few weeks there, of the of people that are just like, even just like the name of of the church that you were at, just are so filled with hope and strength, even amidst just really having a hard go of it. And that sounds really powerful to, to be in that week in a week out, and just to build long-term relationships with people that are just living in a different way than you are kind of used to. That sounded like a really special experience.
Yeah, you mentioned the word hope, and I love it in Arabic. And my Arabic's really rusty, so I'm not actually gonna say anything really in Arabic here that isn't like usual beyond like hello and thank you. The word hope in Arabic, there's actually two words for hope, and this is one of the first stories Pastor Ahmad, who was the Lutheran pastor at the Lutheran Church of Hope, shared with me, is that in Arabic there's two words, and the one word for hope is often like a pipe dream, like how we in the U.S. like I hope for that to happen, but that's like hoping for pigs to fly.
Yeah.
Um, but the other word for hope is a real deep hope
Mhm.
that is possible. The only thing I can really connect it to is if you're a Spanish speaker, the word esperanza, like I think has some of that same kind of feeling of this like this real possibility, but we're still waiting for it and anticipating it at the same time. Um, yeah, don't tell my church Spirit Alive down here in Kenosha, but if there's ever a Lutheran Church of Hope in America that comes knocking and seems like a really good fit for me, I'm definitely going to beeline, because I love that name for a Lutheran church. I think it is like the epitome of what faith is, this hope for things that are unseen, but that we know are possible. Um, yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. I'm curious, you're talking about all these beautiful stories with being in Palestine, but there's a lot of people that do Yagam that aren't in Palestine. Did you want to go to Palestine, or did that kind of get assigned to you? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, so they're doing it slightly different, I think, now. But what kind of happened for me is when you apply, you list some countries that you're like really interested in and sort of interested in or not interested in.
Mhm.
And I won't say if I labeled any nots, but the ones that I listed that I was really serious about, when they bring you all together to do some interviewing with the country coordinators, the ELCA missionaries who were stationed there to kind of organize the program and run it in the individual countries. Um, they assigned me two to interview with, and one was Hungary, where you're working with the Roma people, often called gypsies. Is a rough term, and it's not really a great term to use anymore. They prefer the term Roma, and the Jerusalem West Bank program was the other program I was offered to interview for. And I think what interested me most about both of these programs is that the Romas and the Palestinians are severely marginalized peoples who are so poorly understood in the West. We get very small glimpses of them, and a lot of it is racial stereotyping and ethnic stereotyping. especially for the Palestinians. You know, if you were around during the Intifada days of like the early thousands, I mean, your image of what Palestinians are, it can be very skewed towards that, towards Arafat, the PLO, to Hezbollah, uh, and Hamas. But you know, that's not who the Palestinians were. And so I was really looking forward to, like, part of me had this naive, like, I could walk in the footsteps of Jesus. And I guess I kind of did, in the fact that Jesus is still alive in the world, right? And so I was walking in the living steps of Jesus, not these historical churches and mosques and things like that, but like the day-to-day life of where Jesus would have been and was when I was living there. Um, so it was, yeah, it was where I wanted to go, as my top choice. So when I got offered it, I was just like, kind of like
Yes.
blown away. But even my expectations changed from moment one of being there to when I left in 2014.
Yeah, Kevin, I was struck when you were talking about the living steps of Jesus there, that when I was in the Holy Land, I picked up Elias Shakur, who's a Melkite Catholic priest's memoir called Blood Brothers. And he talks about how so many people go to the Holy Land looking for the ancient stones. But he offers an invitation to look for the living stones as well. And I really found that when I was in the Holy Land, these people that are just living stones. These like really living embodiments of saying, yeah, Jesus is here in amongst these people. I know our congregation Atonement has a long-term relationship with a congregation in El Salvador, and everyone that's been to El Salvador and had connections has had a similar experience, and that there's something just deeply rich and meaningful about spending time day in and day out, even if it's just for a week, with people outside of our context, and seeing a world where hope is a struggle. It's different reasons in El Salvador, but nevertheless, hope is a struggle. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful way to spend a year.
Yeah, one of my most dear memories, and it's the weirdest memory to have from Palestine, of living stones, is one time I was riding the bus. It was probably a Sunday, and Sundays are work days in the Holy Land because it's not the holy day for either Muslims or Jews. So the Christians kind of just, yeah, you got to deal with it. And but I was riding the bus back from Jerusalem, and in Palestine the buses are segregated, so I'm on a Palestinian bus, and and also in Palestine the buses are like often what we would consider like tour buses, which is strange, but they also will pack them like as full as they can get. Like they just keep stopping, and they keep loading up, and they keep loading up. And as we're going, we're in this northern neighborhood of Jerusalem, headed to Ramallah, called Beit Hanina. And there's this old man, this old Muslim man, who's in front of me. And we're both standing, and we're getting more and more packed in. And like, I'm standing in like the doorwell now for the back door, and more people are coming on. And he just turns to me at one point, and he says something in Arabic. And I have no idea what he said to me. And he made eye contact. So it was to me. And he says this. And what he said, couldn't tell you, but I know it was probably something like, how many people is he going to try and fit in this bus? Are we sardines? Or like, to like translate into English. And he kind of laughs, and I kind of laugh with him. And like, for some reason, that memory is just one of my favorites, because it was just like the most real mundane moment, but it was full of like real life. It wasn't just like holy, like, let us walk to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, doing the Via Dolorosa, all of these things. It was like just realness. And then that same guy, we got to the checkpoint, and he looked at me when we got to the checkpoint and mumbled something else in Arabic, like, time for this junk again, and yeah, I have no idea who that guy was, no idea his name, but I'll remember him probably forever, just because that moment was like real.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is when you're saying that, this is probably a little bit less of a normal moment, but one moment I very much remember was when I was in Bethlehem, and I was like right by like the Church of the Nativity. So this is like really where like Jesus was, like the spot where tradition, we hold that, yeah, Jesus was born. And I happened to be over there when, at the time, President Obama was on on a tour of like the Middle East and the Holy Land. And so he just met with some like Israeli, dignitaries, and was supposed to fly a helicopter in so he could see these holy sites as well. And and there was like a sandstorm or something, so he couldn't fly, so he had to get a motorcade. um, and 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 this is like just after the midday prayers, and so the majority of the people were walking away from the the public area where the prayers were and also where the church was. And but there was a crowd that lingered just to see if they could see um, President Obama. And since he had to switch from a helicopter to a motorcade, because it's even though it's not very far from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, it was slower. And so the time that people expected Obama to come and the time that he came just weren't the same, and they were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And this one guy turned to me and said, your president's an Arab, right? And I was like, what? I was like, this sounds like he's made. There's these kind of conspiracy theories that are questioning Obama's ethnicity or anything. And I was like, so I was a little taken aback and defensive. And I said, what do you mean? Because I was confused. And he was like, well, he's running really late, so he's got to be Arab. And then I realized it was just this like self-effacing, playful joke about how long do we have to wait for the guy? And the crowd just waited there peacefully, and Obama drove his motorcade up right to the door of the church nativity, hustled inside, was inside for a few minutes, and hustled out and didn't even give a wave. And that kind of really saddened me, to these people that were willing to wait patiently and joyfully and jokingly, didn't even get an acknowledgement. And I can remember I can just remember feeling really sad that day, but also laughing really hard once I realized the guy was joking with me.
Yeah, yeah. Arab time is a real thing, and Palestinians are really good at running on it. Everything is late. You just kind of like get used to that. And like students, when I was a teacher, you just kind of got used to the fact that school tried to start on time, and like our principal tried to be really harsh about it, and kids still show up 10 minutes late. It's like, that's just the way it goes. The buses run late. It's not a culture. It's a culture based on relationship and experience, and things happen in the pace they happen. And if you end up, spending 10 minutes, 20 minutes having tea with some random shopkeeper because you walked by and engaged them in a conversation, that just happens. And you just kind of have to go with that flow and hope you don't miss the last bus of the
Yeah,
day, or
exactly.
something like that.
Yeah, and for me, like the first day or two of it was jarring, but after a few weeks, I grew to really like it. And I thought it was a really neat thing, and I enjoyed just the way that relationships were prioritized over there.
Yeah, Palestine is, for me, it's the place I will always be incredibly broken about.
Mhm.
And I had my heart broken open by that place, both in terms of being broken open to love and the pain that exists there. And once it's broken, you can't not unsee it. So it's very much a relationship I still struggle with. I went back during seminary. So I did Yagam, and then like 3 weeks later started seminary. That was not a smart transition, by the way. I would not do that twice if I had to go back. But I went back my third year of seminary with a group from the seminary that included friends of the seminary, so donors and students. And um, I just remember the immense pain and love I felt everywhere I went. That once you've been exposed to the ways the world is broken against the ways of God in certain areas, and when you've fallen in love with those people and those places, you can't unsee that. So it walks with you forever, and it still walks with me. I have olive wood and Palestinian art everywhere in my house, and it's like every second of my day I'm always contemplating it and wrestling with, how does this happen in the world, but also how are we part of the healing of it? How is God calling us to be part of the new relationships, the new births in Bethlehem and Ramallah and Jerusalem and elsewhere? How is God calling us to speak up to it, to speak to the life of the moment and not just the destruction of such a harsh place? Yeah, so I mean, I carry all of that love, and that when you mentioned, like, that jarring nature of it, it's like some of it is still so jarring for me, and other parts of it are just like I could just laugh and like tell stories. And while much of me is so broken by it, if I had $1,000 and there wasn't COVID-19, I'd probably hop on a plane right now and fly to Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv if I could, and then catch a bus into Jerusalem and get off at Damascus Gate and then figure out where I'm going to go from there. Um, yeah, it's such a beautiful, heartbreaking, but God-filled land,
Yeah.
and the living God-filled, not just the God of yore or
Yeah,
whatever.
definitely. Yeah, that's beautiful. And yeah, that's a great word. I think that's a great word for us to wrap up on. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing some stories that brings me right back and makes me wish I did a did a year there. Because Yakim's a neat ministry in it. I'm really appreciative to hear your stories about how it's shaped you. So thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Kevin.